Hey, everybody. Lynn Schussler-Williams here.
And Brooke Haynes right here.
Hey, Brooke. And we are here for Frequency 500, a podcast and a mission and a movement.
Yes.
Whew. Well, Brooke, this movement and this mission we have is all about calibrating our energy and our being, our vibration at 500 or above. 500 is love on the map of consciousness scale. And we know from Dr. David Hawkins that if one person calibrates at 500, it counterbalances the energy of 750,000 people calibrating below 200, which is below courage, right? And the world is mostly made up of people calibrating pretty low because until recently, until mass communication, people didn't know about concepts of enlightenment. And they were, the mass of people were living in a way that didn't, it was survival, not thriving, and that sort of thing. And lately, Brooke and I live in Louisville, Kentucky, both of us. And yesterday, there were shootings in Louisville, Kentucky that made the national news. One was a mass shooting in a bank, and the other was a shooting outside of a local technical college. And in the face of that kind of activity in life, which Brooke and I have been struggling to come up with a word to call it, tragedy or devastation, or all of those have so much judgment with them, and they connect to the feelings that we were feeling in our city yesterday. And before that, just a few weeks ago, it was school children in Nashville, which is 3 hours away. And it was, Brooke, there's a lot going on that people's attention and awareness is being focused on. And I found myself, I just want to say this, at one point last night, I realized that I just been feeling awful all day. I had been feeling really highly stressed, but I had the wherewithal to ask myself the question, where am I calibrating on the map of consciousness? And the best I could do was courage. And that's 200. And I just couldn't, that wasn't a good enough answer for me. Mm-hmm. And so, I don't know, I've talked a lot. You want to add something to this or ask a question or anything?
I think this could be labeled as a tough conversation because here we are looking to raise the vibration of the planet. We talk about ways to feel better. We talk about why the world is getting better. And now we're going to talk about mass shootings and that happen everywhere now, it seems. And what does that mean? Like, what does it mean for us? What does it mean for Frequency 500? And how do we honor what's happening and also honor what we know our job is?
Right, exactly. And so one of the things I did was I turned to Dr. David Hawkins, and I did some reading last night and this morning that made me feel a little more connected to a higher purpose, if you will. I don't think we're meant to ignore the hard stuff. And that goes for things like this, violence. That also goes for hard conversations, right? I don't think we're meant to, like, if the whole point of human beingness was for us to just feel, enlightened all the time, and there was no path on the way there, then we wouldn't have incarnated in these bodies in the first place. I think that's Lynn's take on it, right? It's like part of being human is walking through life experiences that are hard. And the real question becomes, how do we show up to answer those?
And Lynn, it was something you just said that I want to go back to for a second. You said it's life, there's some of these things aren't meant to be ignored. And you said as big as these things that we're talking about. And I would like to, and also, and conversations that are tough to have. And also, you know, what I've learned in life, and this can go down a rabbit hole, but I want to kind of put this in a complete bubble here. That also, as ignoring things in my life served me for a while, it no longer serves me. And I'm talking about when I ignored that my handle and my door for 13 years didn't work. I ignored that I was there was a conversation that needed to happen, like you had said, that never did happen for years. I ignored, because I had this big thing happen when I was 15 and I spun it off into a positive, which all was true, but I ignored my sad feelings for 10 years. So when we say ignore, we're talking about, we don't want to ignore the big stuff that's happening now, but let's take this also into what we're all also faced with every single day.
Right. Well, one of the questions that shifted me from feeling like courage was the best I could do yesterday was an idea of seeking to give love rather than looking for where everything's good or looking for where I can receive love or looking for where, right? Like looking for where life seems hunky-dory or whatever, right? Instead of giving in to what was dragging me down, the stress and the worry and the all of that, I asked myself the question, where can I give love given this situation? And the thing that made me remember, there's a movie that one of my kids loves that I've never been able to watch. That's I think it's called The Kid in the Striped Pajamas or something like that. And it's a movie about a boy and his dad who are in a concentration camp in Nazi Germany. And the dad is determined for this little boy who's really young, like below 7, to not understand the tragedy of what's happening behind him and to give him a chance at being a normal person because he had some normal childhood joy and some normal. And so he tells him that the uniform he's wearing is these really cute striped pajamas. And he teaches him to dance. And even when he's being carted away to the gas chambers or to be killed or whatever it is, he's still reaching for his son and doing their little dance together and not letting the tragedy, the trauma, the impact, right? The emotional impact seep in. And so that story has always, even though I can't bring myself to watch the movie because I'd just lose it, I'm sure. That story was what I thought of yesterday when I thought, how can I give love? How can I show up to the world as that dad? Not in a way to say everything's just perfect, but in a way to care so much about the world and the people and the everything that I can show up as love. Like, what does it look like to show up as love and to show up giving love, not needing to receive it, right? And that was the question that I felt myself move past courage on that question.
Yeah. And it's important for us to be able to do that in this. There's so much in what you said, Lynn, that we could go start to talk about, because we could break down everything you just said and really go somewhere with it. it reminded me when we first started talking about what happened yesterday and what's been happening. It really took me back to 2020. And I was living single with my son, and we had, was it 222 or 202 straight days of protesting?
Yes.
And,
in Louisville.
In Louisville, right down the streets from us.
Right. And that was because Breonna Taylor had been murdered here, and she, her death sparked a long season of civil outbursts, right? Of various kinds, right? All kinds of things. Yeah.
And it was a rather confusing time because that was happening right then with COVID, right?
Right. Right.
So it was kind of confusing. And at the same time, I was feeling more alive and with more purpose than I ever had before. Yet I would have glimpses of like military walking in my door, and I'm just going to say it, like even to the point of raping me in front of my son, right? Like I would have these glimpses of fear, but yet I would have to look, and so I would live that. I wasn't blind. And not only was I not blind to what was happening, my mind would take it pretty far because I knew what was possible.
Right.
And at the same time, I had to show up in the world authentically. So how was I getting myself back? And, when you were talking about the stripe, the movie or the book with the striped
pajamas.
I remember having visions of what I would do if someone came into our house and either robbed us, or if they even went so far as to do something terrible to me in front of my son. And I would have conversations in my head saying I would have him turn around and I would tell him to sing a song. And I would sit there and create that much of what I would do during this time and to protect him from moving forward. And so then 3 minutes later, I had to come out of this and say, I feel all of this is happening right now. And I knew and I believed and I trusted it was in our highest good, even though it felt for some people to even hear that statement out of what was happening was almost offensive. Right. But I knew somehow all of this was going to unfold to our highest good somewhere at some point.
Right. No matter what happened to you.
No matter what happened to me, no matter what happened to the things that were going on outside the doors, no matter what was happening with COVID, and no matter what, with all the impact of everything. And so for us to move into that kind of conversation and for us to think about that here on this podcast, I don't think there's any room, and I know you have something you want to share too, but there's no room for us not seeing anything or ignoring something.
Right.
Talk a little bit about ignoring, Lynn.
Yeah. So, I have a history in my life. I don't even know if you know this, of community organizing around issues of environment and then social justice and different things. And I find it really hard to ignore what I see as us collectively doing stupid stuff and us collectively, making choices in this case, as a local place, a state, a country, whatever. I find it really hard to ignore that stuff. And at the same time, I have evolved from paying a lot of attention to it, being the protester on the street, to being all of that, to a place of, while I was raising my children and all of that, I went to a place of kind of not quite ignoring it, but my focus was elsewhere, let's just say, right? To now, I find it really important that we don't ignore, and it is for me, I'm just going to say this for me, it is important for me to not ignore it and to also not let it take me down all the way to just courage, right? And that old saying, Brooke, about I wrote these words this morning, that old saying, and I apologize for not knowing who said this originally. All it takes for evil to win is for good people to do nothing, right? And I think it was Margaret Mead who said, never think that one person doing something good can't change the world, because that's almost always how the change starts, is one person choosing, right? And so with all of that, within the context of Frequency 500, we're not going to come on here and say, let's just all pretend everything is perfect in the world and we can all just like wake up enlightened tomorrow and all of that. The world is here grabbing our attention. The world is here making us feel all the feelings that we are built as human beings to feel, right? Those happen in our bodies. They are part of our physical reality. And ours is to choose. Ours is to choose our response. Ours is to choose. And for me today, the best thing I can do is ask myself that question I asked last night. How do I get beyond courage around this? How do I get above 200? How do I get back to, wherever it is I calibrate on a good day, right?
Right.
And I think, non-attachment as not being attached to the outcomes, right? Being attached to what is ours to do along the journey, and not feeling completely responsible as one single person for the outcomes. That's another piece that allows me to find a way to move back up the scale, right? I want to do more good than harm, right? And by doing that, maybe not, well, I just keep coming back to, how do I express more love? That's my question.
Right.
Given this, how do I express more love?
Yeah. And for me, there's two things. There's this tactile, like for people who want to, if I need in my mind a step-by-step guide, right? Then it is to take out that tone scale, whichever one you're following, and ask yourself a question about the next one, about the next emotion that's a higher than what you're currently feeling. And I will do that. What I tend to personally, what does best for me, which I know and realize it's not the case for everyone, is I go back when anything is bigger than I understand or bigger than what I know how to solve, which is almost everything in my life, which is why this is easy for me, I tend to just fall back into the trusting. I trust of the unfolding. I trust that what this is all working out as it needs to be. I'll never forget my brother looking at me when I said something like that. He's like, so let me guess, if your child just, and paints this really ugly picture of what can happen to someone, right? And said, you're just supposed to just trust that's how it's supposed to be. And I'm like, yeah. As hard as it sounds, and yes. And so for me, because that's the biggest thing I have, is to just fall back into the trust of the higher power, and that this is all, it's for some reason, this is unfolding for the greater of the good at some point somewhere.
Right. And I don't have to be able to see it all. That's what's called faith, right?
Yes.
Right. Believing in a result you can't see yet is faith. And that's what you're saying.
Yeah. And I remember in the last couple of years, I've had this scenario come up where in 2020, my positivity like nearly ended a few friendships. Like it really, they're still different to this day. And it hurt. Like it hurt because they were pretty much accusing me that I was ignoring what was happening. I wasn't seeing, and I was just being positive. Right.
Right.
I'm like, well, actually, I just told you the stories I was having in my head. We are a blended family. I'm not ignorant or ignoring any of this, right?
Right.
But I have a job to do, and my job is to show up and to have this faith or to have this trust in the unfolding, and to also find a place where I could share some love, like you were saying. But I was along the way, I quit talking as much on social media. I quit expressing myself as much because it hurt when I hurt someone, right? It hurt that they were hurt by what I said. And I was talking to a coach of mine at the time, and she liked to describe me. She said, it's kind of like the phoenix rising. You are in the ashes. You can meet people where they are. And that's exactly what I was trying to express at that time, right? And it's not an or, it's an and you can rise and see where things are going. And that is, I feel like, what I can do. I can do well. I do tend to do that in a lot of situations. And now I'm learning how to embrace it. And I have a feeling it's very similar to what we're talking about today. We are here in the ashes. We are feeling the pain of what is burning around or all around us. We are in the confusion. We cried, right? Like we were in tears over this. And we know we have a job to do at this time.
Right.
And that job for me, Lynn, is to say, all right, where can I, what you said, give love? Where can I receive love? Where can I fall into this trust of the unknowing? It's a knowingness, right? What if it were just leading to the whole world to catch on fire? Well, that's where it's leading.
Right.
Our job, that we have a job to do during this, right?
Right.
What if it's not? What if it's to see the greater of the good unfold out of all of this? We don't know, but that's
right.
Job.
Right. The other piece of that for me, Brooke, is I personally, and I don't have a need for anyone else to have this belief. Let me just say that. But I personally have a belief that in the oneness of consciousness, that which breathes us, because none of us can beat our own heart by force of will. None of us can breathe, when we're not breathing. We can't make ourselves breathe or beat our own heart. Those are things that happen automatically for us. So that which animates life, whatever you call that, right? I believe in the oneness of that the life that lives me is the same as the life that lives that blade of grass or that bunny rabbit or that tree or, whatever. And so in that oneness, there is no, if Lynn, this expression of that oneness, right? Like a wave is an expression of the ocean, right? It has every wave has a different shape. Some have more foam than others. Some have, some are taller, some are wider, right? But they're all ocean. They're made up of ocean, right? And that's how I think of all of us. I have this shape and look and brain and all the things, and I'm the expression of that oneness that is Lynn. That's how I think of it. I don't need anybody else to think of it that way, but that's how I think of it. And if I think of it that way, then there is no point, there is no need for me to try to mentally create an enemy. Because there is no enemy. there is only the one consciousness living us all, breathing us all, right? Now, that expression of the consciousness over there that picked up that automatic weapon and walked into that bank yesterday, I have some judgment around that expression of consciousness. And I'm sad, deeply, deeply sad, not only by the choice they made, but by the choices that we collectively have made to allow that to happen, right? To create a society where that happens so regularly. So I have judgment about that. And at the same time, I know that my own spiritual development up the map of consciousness is saying to me, there's no need to create an enemy, right? Because we are one. That doesn't mean I don't get to feel the feelings. It doesn't mean that anyone who's hurt, who's grieving, who's angry, hell, I'm hurt, I'm grieving, I'm angry, right? I'm not saying those things aren't right. I'm saying, this is just the approach that gets me through.
Right. Wow, that was powerful. And one thing you said is we collectively made this. And I've been really looking at that a lot recently. I was one of the things I do is host podcasts for other people,
Mm-hmm. Right.
And they had a young girl on there a couple of weeks ago and diversity conversations. And they said, what do you think your generation, like, where do you think it's going? And she said, well, that depends on where the generation above us, where's your generation going?
Oh.
And she's like, I feel like we are putting our heads down into social media and into our internet and into the community of land because of what was built for us before we got here. Everybody's blaming us for looking down with our head, but we're not the ones who created what we see when we look up. And so I want to take that one wow was right.
Wow.
And so I want to take that, what you said takes that one step farther, because it's not the generation before us or the generation behind in front of us. It's both.
Right.
It's the collective of all of us. There is no one to blame here.
Right.
And I want to blame the news, but there is no one to blame here.
Right. I got we could all come up with a list, right? When I was talking a minute ago, I was mentally hearing the list people were saying, but what about, right? Like you just said, I want to blame the news, right? Like you want to blame, you can go back down the causality tree. Like how did that incident yesterday in Louisville, that shooting, that time when people went to work in the morning and didn't come home at night, how did that event get caused? You could go back down that tree of causality, right? A long, long way. Yeah. And blame. And that will maybe inspire some action in the short term. Great. And how do we get beyond just that? Right. And there's value for me, Brooke. This is why we have Frequency 500. There is value for me in living from a space of trying to raise the level of consciousness so that we can create things that have a higher vibration, so that we can create a community and a world, a global community. And, this idea, people put their heads in the sand because they think they can't do anything about it, right? But here's what we can do, right? Mm-hmm. Every person who calibrates at 500 counterbalances the energy of 750,000 people who calibrate below 200. So if more of us are calibrated at 500 or above, then maybe the person who would have picked up a gun that day doesn't.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what we can do.
maybe our love can even transmute to the next one doesn't, right?
Exactly. And that makes me feel empowered.
Me too.
That makes me feel like there is something I can do. I no longer just feel like a victim of it, and in fear that someone I love is going to be a victim of it, in fear for, I saw an editorial piece talking about the children who protested with signs in Tennessee that said, "Am I next?"
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's the question, "Am I next?" that these children were asking in their march in Tennessee after the school shooting. And that is a fear gripping thought.
Sure.
Am I next? Is my child next? Is my grandchild next? Is my, all of that, is my parent next? All of that is a fear gripping thing. So what if, without ignoring the reality of that, we can ask the questions that help us collectively lift? And that, to me, is the point of Frequency 500.
I think that's a perfect point to be made. And I think we could go on, take this, what we just said in the last 24 or 5 minutes, and really take it and expand on every piece of what we just said, because I have so many more things I want to say and address, and and I want to keep it going down so many different rabbit holes here that would be so much fun. But I think
write them down so we won't forget.
Yes, right. So, but I think that you just wrapped it up, and I think that you just wrapped it up for us, and it is that's what we can give to our listeners. That's what we can give to ourselves and each other. Is we can give the ability to think forward, to lift ourselves, and to ask the questions, where can I find love in this? Where can I detach from some of the feelings, some of the outcomes, while I'm transforming and clearing out some of these feelings?
Yeah.
And where can I rise above?
So good. Well, I want to say a big thank you to our listeners. Thank you for being willing to be in a conversation that's not always easy to be in. And to anyone who this was a hard conversation or a triggering conversation, or for whom it brought up any trauma, I say, I send you love and peace. And, as my mama said, I'm holding the perfect thought that all of this conversation lands in a way that is supportive and not something else.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, have a beautiful, loving day.
Absolutely. Thanks, Brooke.